Hello and welcome to the Capitol Report on NTD Television. I'm Steve Lance. Former President Trump is facing a total of 91 charges. This after a fourth indictment in Georgia. He, along with others who probed election fraud in Georgia, are accused of being involved in a criminal enterprise. So what's Trump's next move? NTD's Melina Wisecup is outside the Fulton County Courthouse with the details. So Melina, what can you tell us?
So there are a couple of avenues that Trump's defense team could take here. They could claim the First Amendment, saying that the president's challenging the election results is within his rights because it's protected by free speech. That's one avenue they could take. They could try to move this case to federal court, saying that since Trump was in the White House during these actions, that he's protected, and they could move this to federal court. And then another avenue that they could take is try to use yesterday's incident where the court actually briefly posted the charges online before the grand jury voted. They could use this as a way to dismiss the indictment, saying that there's prosecutorial misconduct. So these are all the avenues they could take, and there are a lot more, of course, because, of course, they always use legal strategies to try to defend their people as best as they can. Now, who will be making all of these decisions on these strategies that the defense team will be bringing forth? That will be a new judge by the name of Scott McGaffey. He's only been a judge since 6 months ago, and Brian Kemp, the governor, just appointed him. Now he's facing this very complex list of indictments, these broad charges, 41 charges, 19 people are being indicted. Trump says it's all just to interfere with his political campaign for the White House. Here's how Trump has since responded to these indictments.
They know they can't beat me in a fair fight at the ballot box, so they're weaponizing the legal system to try and defeat me. And you know what? This is the greatest political movement of all time. It's going to make America great again. There's never been a movement like it.
And Trump is responding to this by holding a press conference on Monday in New Jersey, just detailing his investigation into what he calls election fraud here in the state of Georgia. The sheriff here in Fulton County has said he does not plan to give Trump any special treatment, meaning that a mugshot could be taken if they don't make any prior arrangements with Secret Service to avoid this, as they did in those previous indictments. It also could be televised because of Georgia law, unless the judge tries to bar media from getting in. That is, if Trump is arraigned here in Georgia and it doesn't move to a federal court. But ultimately, we have no idea when Trump will be here in Georgia, if he'll come at all, and instead make a decision, try to, make a court decision from where, his home, have his attorneys come in and just do this separately. So we won't know if he'll come, but the DA has given them until Friday of next week to come and surrender to these charges.
Georgia prosecutors also charged 18 more people besides the former president. Let's take a closer look at the other individuals involved in the case.
Charging 19 individuals with violations of Georgia law arising from a criminal conspiracy.
The Fulton County District Attorney says the 19 defendants all conspired to overturn the results of the 2020 presidential election in Georgia. Some notable defendants besides Trump are former White House Chief of Staff Mark Meadows, former New York Mayor Rudy Giuliani, who worked as Trump's attorney, and Justice Department official Jeffrey Clark, who allegedly advanced Trump's efforts to question his election loss in Georgia. Giuliani released a statement on Tuesday morning, calling the indictment the next chapter in a book of lies with the purpose of framing President Donald Trump and anyone willing to take on the ruling regime. Furthermore, prosecutors charged 6 lawyers, a former White House aide, 3 of 16 Georgia Republicans who signed a certificate stating that Trump had won the state, the former director of Black Voices for Trump, a pastor, a publicist, a bail bondsman, and the elections director in Coffee County. The 98-page indictment describes all 19 defendants as members of a criminal organization that operated in Georgia and other states.
Trump's top contenders in the GOP primary reacting to the latest indictment in Georgia. That's as the Biden administration trying to stay away from talking about Trump's legal battles. NTD's Iris Tao has more from the White House.
Former President Trump is getting both support and criticism from his 2024 White House Republican contenders. Florida Governor Ron DeSantis on Tuesday condemned the legal strategy used to indict Trump and calling it an attempt to criminalize politics.
A RICO statute, which was really designed to be able to go after organized crime, not necessarily to go after political activity. And so I think it's an example of this criminalization of politics.
And conservative entrepreneur Vivek Ramaswamy offered to help Trump, saying in a Monday tweet that he'd write an amicus brief to the court to show his support, saying prosecutors should not be deciding U.S. presidential elections. But not every Republican candidate is on Trump's side. Former Arkansas Governor Asa Hutchinson on Tuesday again called for Trump to drop out of the race.
Donald Trump should withdraw from the race, and that case is only made stronger with every indictment and case that is brought against him.
And we're also seeing a split of opinions in Congress. Democratic leadership responded in a statement saying no one, not even the president, is above the law. But Republican House Speaker Kevin McCarthy wrote that justice should be blind, that Biden has weaponized government against its leading political opponent. And all this unfolds as the White House continues to try to stay away from directly commenting on Trump's legal issues. But it did say today that President Biden has spoken on several occasions about protecting the democracy. And Biden's also spoken about the need to maintain the independence of the Justice Department. Reporting from the White House, Iris Howe, NTD News.
Now reacting to the indictment coming out of Georgia against former President Trump, and to discuss the nature of this particular case, we have William Jacobson, law professor at Cornell Law School. William Jacobson, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me on.
Of course, William, I'd like to get your thoughts. What do you make of this latest indictment of the former president? 41 counts, 18 other co-defendants, this one even invoking the RICO Act, which is usually reserved for mob bosses.
Well, I think it's an attempt by Georgia to do a shock and awe sort of attack on Donald Trump and his supporters, that they've thrown in so much with so many people. They mention up to 30 potentially other people who are unindicted co-conspirators. So it's throwing everything at him and really replicating what the federal government is already doing in the District of Columbia. So it appears to be a very political action by the prosecutor in Georgia.
This case does seem to be a bit different from the others in the sense that it appears as though there's going to be a mugshot. It's certainly on the table as of now, as well as, from what I understand, cameras being permitted in the courtroom. How does this change the dynamic in terms of optics?
Well, I think it changes it a lot. You could see it yesterday when the prosecutor gave her smirking statement that they're going to play this up. I think the prosecution wants, a pound of flesh from Donald Trump. They want the mugshot. They want him paraded in front of the cameras. So I think that they could have done this a different way. Like in Manhattan, they didn't do that. Manhattan indictment. They haven't done that in the federal indictments. So I think this all smells very political from the way the prosecution is conducting itself.
It's no secret that media can concoct narratives, omit context, twist things in very believable ways. But when this type of activity evolves into the justice system where people's livelihoods are at stake, where are we as a nation? Because it ultimately boils down to whose propaganda is better to a certain extent, in a way.
Well, I think one of the big concerns that people have is that this is the weaponization of the prosecutorial function for political purposes. And what's most outrageous is many outrageous things that have happened. I don't agree with Donald Trump's conduct after the election, but I also don't think it was criminal. But now they waited to bring these charges until we're in an election year. And that's the problem. These charges are based on conduct that took place almost 3 years ago. They could have brought this case a year ago. We would have had the trial, we would have had the result, and it wouldn't have interfered with the Republican primaries and the general election. That's another thing that makes this smell very political.
Are you sensing any potential loopholes in any of these cases, specifically this Georgia one? Is there a jurisdiction issue? Could there be a chance that it gets tossed out?
Well, I don't think so. I think that, Georgia is entitled to bring charges based on its state RICO statute. I think it will be scrutinized by a judge. I'm not sure they've alleged the elements of it, but Georgia and the feds can move at the same time for the same conduct. We've seen that in many criminal prosecutions in the past. So I don't think this is going to go away. Pieces of it might, but I think this is a case that's probably going to have to go to trial.
And lastly, where does the Supreme Court stand in all of this? And do they have any say?
It's highly unlikely that the Supreme Court would get involved prior to the conclusion of the trial. Supreme Court doesn't normally micromanage cases as they're proceeding through trial. I think you do have an issue here, which is that you have local prosecutors and the federal government bringing charges that are going to interfere with a federal election. I don't know if that will move an appeals court or the justices to take action. I don't think so. But this is a highly unusual circumstance. This has never happened before, that they are going to tie up the most likely nominee of a major political party in an election year. And I think that's something the Supreme Court's going to have to think about. I'm not expecting them to do anything, but this is a once in a lifetime, really once in our nation's lifetime sort of circumstance where the prosecutions have been so weaponized during a political year to tie the hands of a political candidate.
William Jacobson, really appreciate your insights. Thank you.
Great, thank you.
Thank you for watching the Capitol Report. If you want to see our full broadcast, check us out at epochtv.com.